going to do presentations, who have been working really all semester and part of last semester on creating a very vibrant program. So what I will say historically, since our founding in 2014, we have built, all of us together, faculty, students, administrators, a pedagogy which really has students at the center. We believe that students are capable of carrying out original research, and the publications, the work, the inspiration we get from you, our students, is really very interesting. From this experience, we know that students bring new ideas, a new perception, and a new way of using, for example, the tools of technology into what we're doing. So with this idea that the classroom is a space where faculty and students share their ideas, share their knowledge, and create new knowledge is something that I think we've been able to adhere to, and the excitement, the energy that our students bring into this community is really very interesting. In addition to a pedagogy that takes place in the classroom, we also work out in the community. We believe that the walls of an institution is not something that should prevent students from having a broader view of what's going on in the world. There is no ivory tower. The ivory tower is our community, our world, and part of our work is having students look reflexively at what they're doing, have an idea, what is my position in this world? What is my privilege? Why do I think the way I do? Why do I make the choices I do? And listening to people in the local community is very valuable. I think that without this, you cannot change. You cannot work for social change. You cannot create an atmosphere of active learning without it. I know many of you who are going to present have received your inspiration from the work that you've been doing in the community with each other in discussion. We also encourage internships outside the university, and we definitely encourage study abroad, which gives students the opportunity to look at the world in multiple lenses, to see why people do things they're doing, say in Japan, or in another part of the world, another part of India even, than what we do, why we make our choices. The idea is flexibility in our learning possibilities. So we're going to hear from students, we're going to hear about the challenges, we're going to learn how they have applied their ideas, what they've learned, and the new things that they bring into the world of knowledge and knowledge creation. Thank you all for taking part in this, and I would like to say thank you to the organizers, to everyone else, our Vice Chancellor, who unfortunately isn't here, but who has supported us all the time, to the faculty, and we also have a wonderful speaker who is going to give the keynote, and I think Gianni is going to present, Sohail Hashmi, who has a lot to say to you, who has a wonderful history of working with people, bringing new ideas to the fore, and creating an awareness that otherwise could be buried in the realm of politics, the realm of practicality, and ideas that perhaps do not support the notions of everyone. So thank you all very much, and Gianni, okay, Kartik.
Thank you, Professor. This year, we are extremely fortunate and grateful to be able to have with us Sohail Hashmi. Sohail Hashmi, a historian, conservationist, and filmmaker. He has conceptualized, scripted, and produced several documentary series such as Pioneers of Women's Education, Unknown Freedom Fighters, History of Delhi, and History of Urdu. He has been a media consultant to the National Literacy Mission and the director of Leap Years, a creative activity center for children. He has written extensively on literacy and democracy. He is a regular columnist in prominent newspapers and magazines. He has translated Mahmood Mamdani's Good Muslim, Bad Muslim into Urdu. He taught a course on linguistic diversity of Delhi at Ashoka University. Sohail Hashmi, a founding trustee of Sahmat, writes and speaks occasionally about Delhi and on issues of culture, communalism, and education, and conducts heritage walks. I now call upon Sohail Hashmi to give the keynote.
Professor Kathleen, other members of the faculty, and students. I am extremely honored to be invited to speak as the keynote address at the start of this 3-day intense kind of involvement with, and I've just been through the brochure and to get an idea of the kind of presentations that are going to be made and the engagements that the students here have with some of the major issues dealing with humanities and the issues of gender and segregation and so on and so forth. And I was going through the brochure, and I wondered, why didn't they teach like this when we were in college? Now, what I'm going to do is, the title for my presentation is Past and Heritage. And these are issues that are increasingly becoming central to how we look not only at our past, but also how we are defining our present and how we are imagining our future. So I have no answers. I'll be posing some questions, and you'll have a lot of questions. I may not have the answers. But I think questions need to be raised. Before I proceed, there is just one little thing that I want to say. If a question comes to mind, please ask. Because the way our society has been constructed, we have been trained from the time when we were toddlers to not ask questions. And we are constantly told, or we have this idea that this might be a stupid question. there are no stupid questions. Whole lot of answers are rather dumb. But that shouldn't stop you from asking questions. So please, if a question comes to mind, please ask. Why is the past always described as glorious? If the theory of evolution is correct, and I believe it is, the present has to be more advanced, developed, and more glorious than the past. But we continue to look at the past as a glorious period. Is it due only to nostalgia about the good old days that the earlier generations bequeath to successive generations, or is there more to it? In essence, this is the question that we will seek to address today. Sorry, I'm working with a very old computer. The one that I had is now in the possession of the ED. So, and they seem to have no plan of returning it to me. So this is my daughter's old computer that I'm trying to work with. So, so in essence, the question that we will seek to address today is everything in the past glorious? And what is the distinction between the past that we have and what is our heritage? You don't have to agree with me, but I hope you will grant me a patient hearing and judge my presentation on the anvil of reason and logic. Now, before I proceed, let me place before you a caveat. I am not going to berate or belittle the great achievements that we made in the fields of astronomy, medicine, mathematics, and much else in the past. All this is given. But we are not talking about our achievements. Today, we want to look at our past. What I'll seek to place before you is a critique of how we view our past. And my presentation will focus on how we remember the positive and forget or underplay the less positive. My position is that this treatment, though not entirely incorrect, is at best only a partial picture of the reality of our past. Was all of our past really glorious? What about caste and untouchability? And the exclusion, historically, of the marginalized and the excluded. The status of women, denial of access to education to large sections of the population, the treatment of the Adivasis, the Aboriginals of India. This is also our past. Is this also part of our glorious heritage? And these are some of the questions that I want you to think about. Clearly, our recollection of our past is selective. We foreground the positives and place on the back burner the negatives or the less positives. Is it just a lapse of memory, or is there something else that is at play here? What is positive is certainly our heritage. But what is negative in our past also informs our present, though it is not a past that we can be proud of. We always select from the past, and our memory of our past is always selective. And in selection, you pick and choose. For example, we talk of the Vedic tradition to the exclusion of any other philosophical tradition. We don't talk of the Mimamsa tradition. And Mimamsa was a very important philosophical tendency which holds that cognition of reality should be based on observing the material world. Now, this is a position taken more than 3,000 years ago. That our understanding of reality has to be based on observing the material world and not to look at it as something that is given, ordained, created through divine intervention. That you have to observe and then draw inferences from there. The philosophy of Mimamsa argued that our perception of reality should draw inferences from the observed. Compare them with both the similar and dissimilar and draw analogies. Formulation of theories and conclusions should flow from the observed world and not on the basis of divine laws. Similarly, we do not talk of the Charvak or the Lokayat philosophy that based itself once again on an atheistic perception of the universe and maintained that direct observation of reality, empiricism, and inferences drawn from the observed and the lived reality are the proper sources of knowledge. The Lokayat bases itself on philosophical skepticism, rejects ritual and the idea of the divine. If you are interested in exploring this further, please read Lokayat by Devi Prasad Chattopadhyay. Devi Prasad Chattopadhyay, who was born in 1918 and died in 1993, is the author of Lokayat, a study in ancient Indian materialism. He made seminal contributions to the exploration of the materialist current in ancient Indian philosophy. He is also known for his work on history of science and scientific method in ancient India, especially science and society in ancient India. On the ancient physicians Charak and Sushruta, he was awarded the Padma Bhushan, India's third highest civilian honor, posthumously in 1998. Both the Lokayat and the Mimamsa traditions were popular philosophical traditions that informed both Buddhism and Jainism, but were eclipsed from the 10th century onwards on the revival of Brahmanism. Why do you think these and other material philosophies were eclipsed and virtually erased? And why were they erased? The erasure of the materialist interpretations of the world included the virtual erasure of all references to Ashoka and also Buddhism. We came to know of Ashoka through the deciphering of Brahmi script in 1828. You know what that means? Till 1828, nobody in the world knew about a king called Ashoka. Till 1828. He is now recognized as one of the greatest emperor to have ruled not only the subcontinent, but one of the greatest empire builders of the world. Nobody knew about him till 1828. And nobody knew about him because all references to Ashoka were erased from the 10th century onwards. References to Ashoka survived in the Brahmi script. And this is a script that evolved around the 3rd century BC. And today, descendants of that language are to be found in different parts of India and also in the Far East. And the language traveled with Buddhism. But with the rise of Brahmanism beginning the 10th century, the biggest challenge before Brahmanism was Buddhism. Jainism they were able to appropriate. Buddhism resisted appropriation, and it had to be not only wiped out but erased from history. And but for one man, James Prinsep, who was a coin collector, and he traveled all over the subcontinent collecting old coins and trying to understand what was written on them. And there was one script that he couldn't decipher, because it only appeared one letter there, one letter there. But on a coin, how much could you write? You didn't have those micro pens with which you make your dies now. So he couldn't read it. It was a chance visit to Delhi that he found a huge monolith with large amount of text, and he identified some of the letters that he had seen on the coins that he had been collecting, not only in India but also in Sri Lanka. And he began to compare them. This pillar which gave us an understanding of Ashoka is in the Firoz Shah Kotla, the Ashokan pillar. And it arrived there because Firoz Tughlaq had gone hunting, and he found this pillar beautifully polished and with engravings on it. And he was fascinated with it. Initially, he thought he'll dig it out and take it to his capital city. Diggings began, and he realized when they reached the bottom, it's going to fall and break. So he issued orders for people in the surrounding villages to bring as much bales of cotton, carpets, mattresses that they could. And they were piled all around the pillar. And the pillar was tied with huge ropes. And then digging began, and it was eventually lowered on those piles of carpets. And then transported on a bullock cart, virtually manhandled on top of a bullock cart that was pulled by 36 pair of oxen, taken to the river, transferred on a barge, dragged all the way through the Jamna to behind where the Kotla Firoz Shah is now, and then through a ramp taken on top of his palace. That's how the pillar came to be there. And in 1825, Prinsep saw it, and he deciphered, and one name kept on appearing, Priyadarshi. And he thought Priyadarshi was a ruler from Sri Lanka. But he traveled all over the country looking up, because now he could read the Brahmi script. And then he realized the king is from India. And his children had taken their religion of Buddha to Sri Lanka. And that is why Ashoka is mentioned in old Sri Lankan coins. Telling you this story to give you an idea of how systematically in the past our past was being rewritten through erasure of historic texts. I'm not talking of what is happening in the present. But this is something that happened between the 10th century and the 13th, 14th century. The references survived in Brahmi, and Prinsep was able to decipher, and that's how we came to know of Ashoka, probably the first king in the world who thought of his subjects. seriously. Because on his inscriptions are laid down the principles of good governance. And they were spread all through his empire. And he appointed people to stay near those stones who were paid by the government to read out the text to all passers-by. And one of the last paras in many of these instructions is, if your local administrator does not follow these just principles, please report. Report to local authorities so that these violations of the law of justice are not violated. I don't think there were too many kings, not only not then, but subsequently, who have thought of this, telling the people that they have rights. And we need to think, why was this erased? And one of the reasons why this happened was perhaps because the knowledge of Brahmi was removed and Sanskrit was presented as the mother of all knowledge. And Sanskrit had no references to Ashoka. The rise of one dominant perspective at the cost of other methods of understanding the world leads to a gradual decline of the clash of ideas, and a monolithic perception of the world begins to push out the diversity of our perception of the world. And we get trapped in an intellectual cul-de-sac, a dead end. What I am saying has no reference to the present. Once again, let me assure you, unless we see the past as a society that was as full of contradictions, inequalities, injustices as the present, and unless we also see the oppressed and the marginalized struggling to change their lives, the world of ideas that seek to keep them confined, and the process to change the world they live in. We cannot comprehend our past in all its dimensions and contradictions unless we look at the past through this. Once we learn to look at the past through the prism that reveals the myriad colors of life that we have been trained to see as a monochrome image, we'll be able to separate the grain of life from the chaff of a dead past. It has been recorded that Buddha, once speaking on the question of knowledge, said the following. And please listen to this very carefully. This was said 2,500 years ago. Do not believe in anything simply because you have heard it. You have been hearing a whole lot of things from me. Don't believe it just because you have heard it. Do not believe in anything simply because it is spoken and rumored by many. Do not believe in anything simply because it is found written in your religious books. Do not believe in anything merely on the authority of your teachers and elders. I am not your teacher, but I am an elder. Do not believe in traditions because they have been handed down for many generations. And this is crucial. But after observation and analysis, when you find that anything agrees with reason and is conducive to the good and benefit of one and all, accept it and live up to it. Buddha said this in one of his sermons in reaction to a question about the nature of knowledge? Should one believe in unquestioning acceptance of the idea of a glorious past? Or should one critically evaluate every idea that is presented to you? Should one accept ideas of greatness, or should one question everything? Unquestioning acceptance of anything is the death of knowledge. It destroys curiosity. And without curiosity and questioning, there is no progress. Thank you. इसको निकाल दें अब जी थैंक यू
Thank you so much, sir, for that keynote. We now like to invite Professor Dean, Dean Professor Kathleen, and Vice Dean Johnny Banerjee to the stage. Yeah. Yeah. We now open the floor for discussion and questions. Excuse me, sir.
Thank you, Professor, for that very insightful talk.
That has, I don't know, the whoever wrote the introduction is very generous. I conduct heritage walks, but I'm not a historian. I've never studied history as a discipline. And, you know, I have no business to be calling myself a historian. Yeah, and not a professor, no.
So you spoke about past and heritage and the idea of how the past is erased. In this context, given that this conference is also about crisis in and of education, I wanted to ask you that in public universities, for instance, there's a rich heritage of student activism. And in private universities, we see effectively that, one, it's difficult for student activism to emerge because the conditions are very different and students are viewed as customers. In the context of Jindal, Jannaty Manch is going to be performing at this conference. A reading circle named after Sohail Hashmi has been unilaterally banned by the administration. So in this context, how do we look at the heritage of student activism in public universities, and how should students in private universities be responding to this?
Well, what are called public universities, is Jindal a public university? It's a private university. Now, private universities are a new institution. Jindal is what, 10-year-old? Yeah. So there is a long tradition of activism in public universities, which goes back to the time of our freedom struggle. But if you look around today, you find that there is very little activism left in public universities also. The elections to JNU Students' Union were held after 4 years. 2 years one can say all right because of COVID. But the next 2 years, specious arguments. They delayed interviews, they delayed admissions, and they said till there are PhD admissions are over, we will not hold elections. And they have held elections now when they are just less than 6 months left for the next election. Large number of universities, students' unions have been banned. Many universities do not allow the student organizations to function. There are officially floated student councils. And this is not a very new trend. One of our most premier institutions in the teaching of economics and sociology, Delhi School of Economics, has never had a student union, never. And there are large number of them. St. Stephen's has a student association. They don't have a student union. And St. Stephen's, and there are many other colleges which are not affiliated to the central union of all the colleges of Delhi University. Actually, there are close to 150 affiliated colleges, but less than 70 are affiliated to Delhi University Students' Union. And the time when I was a student of Delhi University, which is 50 years ago, more than 50, almost 50 years ago, 69 I joined, there were only indirect elections and rampant corruption. Because each college elected 2 people who will go to elect the central panel indirectly. The moment the results came, these 2 representatives used to be kidnapped, virtually kidnapped, and kept prisoners in large palatial buildings where they were plied with everything that you can imagine. And huge money was given. And it is these people who elected those people who ran the Students' Union for a year. So there has been a tradition of student activism, but many places this activism did not play out in students getting empowered in the functioning of the university. Because the students' unions had no representation in the academic councils, in the entire process of admissions. And JNU was an exception. But during the time of the freedom struggle, there was phenomenal activism. But gradually, once those who were fighting for freedom came to power, they started looking at it from a different perspective. So it was Mahatma Gandhi, the Ali brothers, who gave the slogan of boycotting English education and started their own institutions. And Jamia was created. That is how Jamia was created. So that was the time when you were fighting the colonial masters. But when they were pushed out, and those who were fighting till yesterday now became the rulers, they said now students have to go back to their studies. Yeah? So this is something that is common between those who run private universities and public universities. To my mind, the only way student activism can happen is for students to take things in their own hands. They have to demand participation. And they'll have to find methods of mobilizing opinion. And let me tell you, whenever it happens, it will come from the students of the humanities. Because those who are studying pure science, and in any case, nobody studies pure science in this country. You only study applied science. We are a strange country where IIT graduates are considered scientists. No. They are technocrats. There are no inventions happening there. Nobody is studying pure mathematics in this country, except for one small institution. Nobody knows about it, but that is one institution. Nobody studies pure physics. We are only studying applied sciences. And those majority of them are so totally cut off from the reality of this country that they don't engage with it. It is primarily the students of the humanities who are studying economics, who are studying political science, sociology, who are getting exposed to the living conditions of the vast majority of this country, who have these concerns. And that's why I'm saying, when it comes, I don't know. But if it comes, it will come from the students of the... Among the students of science, there are some who will join. But the initiative will come from the students of humanities. I don't know whether that answers your question. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
A very good one, sir. I'm Manan, a second year student of the BA Liberal Arts program. And I'm asking that question only because you motivated me in the beginning saying that no question is stupid. So I'm just trying to make an attempt to ask a reasonable question. It is on the talk you gave. And the question I have, sir, is that can this partial image of the past which we have with us right now, as you have mentioned, what can it ever be completed? Is there any way that we can complete it? And the continuation to that question is that if it cannot, what do we do with the partial image, and how do we take the best learnings from it to, as you mentioned, create a better present and hopefully a better future? Thank you.
You see, what has been kept out of our understanding of the past, I have given you a couple of examples, like the virtual non-mention of philosophies like Mimamsa and Charvak. There is a lot of academic work that has been done, and Professor Devi Prasad Chattopadhyay's work is absolutely seminal. So there is quite a lot of work that has been done in that area to recover the past that has deliberately been sought to be erased. So that exists. You know, now the recent studies that have been going on, for example, on human migration, DNA studies have been done, and now we know that about 60,000 years ago, there were people living in central India, 60,000 years ago. The Aryans arrived. The earliest you can date their arrival in the subcontinent is 5,000 years ago. Just about that time. Because that is when you have found the first remains of a domesticated horse. And there's a very interesting paper, if you want to follow that line, the Aryan Question and the Horse by Professor R.S. Sharma. Phenomenal study. It's just a 15-20 page paper. But what amount of scholarship he brings into that. So we have had Homo sapiens living in the subcontinent from 60,000 years ago. And the Aryan incursion is 5,000 years ago, yesterday. Virtually yesterday. But we don't get to hear anything about these people who were there 55,000 years before them. But at most unexpected places, evidence pops up. There is this road connecting, what is that called? Andheriya Bagh, which used to be Andheriya Mode, and now is the Chhatarpur metro station. From there is a road that goes to Gurgaon, the Mehrauli-Gurgaon road. If you're driving down that road, you cross Ghitorni, and there is a road turning left that connects Gurgaon to Faridabad. For some strange reason, it is known as the Reliance Road. And if you go down that road, there is a pristine forest on your right. The Haryana government has been trying to sell off land around there to build Aravali View apartments. Thanks to interventions by environmentalists and all that, one of whom was almost beaten so badly that he had to be hospitalized for weeks. But thanks to the struggle, that forest is preserved. Last year, in the middle of that forest, they have found rock paintings that have tentatively been dated 35,000 years old. 35,000 years. The oldest rock paintings before that we had in India were Bhimbetka 10,000 years ago. Suddenly, this area now has evidence of human habitation, of people who were painting the experiences of their daily life on rocks 35,000 years ago. So there is, and now this entire discipline of DNA studies has opened up this phenomenal field where every day new discoveries are being made. Any one of you, this is not very difficult. All you require is a swab from your tongue, and they'll give you your DNA, and suddenly you will discover that entire idea of purity goes out through the window. The kind of mixing that has taken place here, and we still keep on talking of racial purity, and we are of Aryan descent, and so on and so forth. So there is, as science advances, as our methods of study advance, constantly new areas are being opened up, and things that we had thought are gone forever, that we will never know, they are new methods of finding out. One of our former Prime Minister, Manmohan Singh, his daughter is a very well-known historian, and the work she has done on the ancient history of Delhi, and actually pre-ancient history. And she has found areas where in the time of the, what is that period called? The Neolithic period. There were workshops where weapons were being made, stone weapons, but there were two workshops. One in Badarpur and the other in JNU. In the, So every day people are researching, people are looking, and they're finding new things. So the attempts to erase large parts of our past survive and live along with attempts to rediscover, to find out what is. So, and this is an ongoing struggle. This has to continue. Those who do not want knowledge to expand, they live with certainty of truth. They know the truth. So there is no need to read anything. Every day you are told. All the knowledge is there in the Gita. And all the knowledge is there in the Quran. You don't have to read anything else. So there is that school. And there are those who know that a book written so many thousands of years ago cannot have all the knowledge. There are new things. New things are happening, new things are being discovered every day. And this is a fight between these two. The question is, who will win? The Roman Catholic Church did not want the earth to rotate around the sun. They didn't succeed. They gave hell to Galileo, but the world has been spinning and going around the sun. So, the confidence that you cannot suppress knowledge. You might retard its growth for a little while, but eventually, because that is the essence of life, it has to grow. And it will find ways. It will find ways. About that I have no doubt. But yes, the times we are living in, this is a tough fight. But tough fights have to be fought. Yeah?
Hello sir, I am Pragnya. I am also a second year JSLH student. So you did end your note with saying a sentence that curiosity and questioning will make you learn a lot. But then that also comes along with a lifelong learning and session, and that goes on with some uncertainties. How do you think we can navigate these uncertainties and adapt the change that we go through while learning and understanding them?
You see, certainty is a trap. It is only religion that deals with certainty. Knowledge deals with doubt. You cannot begin with clarity. It is constantly, you have to attack clarity. And that is when knowledge comes. Because if you have this worldview that call him Allah or call him Brahma or call him whatever, he created the universe in n number of days. There are millions of people who live with that certainty. And there are those who say that, we have rocks that have been dated 5 billion years. Now, how do these two compare? So, in the search of knowledge, it is questioning. And which is what my entire presentation was about. You have to question. And there is curiosity. Without curiosity, there is no knowledge. I think when human beings began to move out of Maropeng in South Africa, which has been identified as the place where Homo sapiens first evolved, when they began to travel out, what took them out? When they continued to move and they reached the east coast of Africa, and remember this is happening about 65,000 years ago from today, the tail end of the last ice age, the polar ice caps are really huge, and the mean sea level is maybe 400 feet, 500 feet below where it is today. And the ocean floors are dotted with islands. And you hopped from island to island, maybe on trunks of fallen coconut trees. But why did you go? Udhar kya hai? If you are not curious, you will not travel. And I find this rather heartbreaking that we have no travelogues from India. No travelogues. We didn't travel. Because we were told that if you cross the river, you lose your caste. People didn't travel. There are very, very few travelogues written by Indians. Fahian came here, Hyun Sang came here, Ibn Battuta came here, Afanasi Nikitin came here, Marco Polo came here. But how many of us traveled? And that is why I'm constantly underlining this thing. Ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. We have a system which has systematically destroyed curiosity. It is only the curious who push the borders of knowledge. So this problem you have is the problem of being curious. And the uncertainty will remain. Because this professor of mine, he said one day in class that the area of the known is always equal to the area of the unknown. And I thought this was a great formulation. And that was, I was in my late 20s. But only a couple of years ago, I realized, no, this is not a correct formulation. The correct formulation is that the area of the known is always smaller than the area of the unknown. The more you know about anything, there is more to know about the same thing. You know? So this, and unless we have this uncertainty, the search will not continue. The moment you are certain, I have the answers, finished. Then what do? You know, you have all the answers. Then there is nothing else to do. Eat and sleep. Yeah.
So we have time for one more question. After that, there will be more time available after the tea and refreshments round to engage with Sir. So we have time for the one last question.
Hello, sir. I just wanted to not necessarily ask anything that will contribute a lot of knowledge, but so we talk about how ignorance is the opposite of bliss, right? But how far is knowledge even bliss? And how do you reconcile all the suffering and the reason why people curb their knowledge is also often to avoid sensation, right? So how have you personally reconciled with and balanced these two things? Sorry.
This is a very complex question that you have asked. I could think of a शेर by Ghalib. हसद से दिल अगर अफसुर्दा है गर में तमाशा हो कि चश्मे तंग शायद कसरते नज़ारा से वाह हो. I'll explain that to you. Hasad is envy. So if you are sad, heartbroken because of envy, look around. See the world. It is possible that the exposure to the vastness of this world will rid you of your envy. You are envious because you are living in a small world. You have small certainties. Look around. And that, I think, is my answer to the question. Open your eyes. The greater is your exposure, the greater is your expression. Yeah? And the greater expression you have, you understand the world better and you can communicate not only to others, but to yourself. And then these small little niggling doubts and sufferings wither away. Because our own problems, they might appear to us as phenomenally large, but when they are seen in comparison to the sufferings of the others, and that happens when you go out and you get exposure, and then you realize, your little problem of not getting an A+ is nothing in comparison to those who have not been able to send their children to school for 5 generations. So that is what it is. You have to see it in the context. What is crucial for me as a human being? As a human being. As an individual careerist, that might be something else. But as a human being, what is crucial for me? And that is the choice one has to make at every step. Yeah?
Thank you so much, sir. We now like to call upon stage Professor Joyani Banerjee for the vote of thanks.
Thank you very much for, this mind-opening, inspiring talk. So on behalf of the Jindal School of Liberal Arts and Humanities, we would like to thank you for coming all the way. And while listening to you, I was thinking of so many of our courses, that we teach at JSLH. And we try to encourage students to ask questions and to bring forward multiple stories. So thank you for, reinstating that belief also on the importance of raising questions, of asking questions. And one thing that struck me was, as academics, we are always trying to create complex concepts. Students also try to grapple with complex concepts. But I think listening to you, the way you put forward such deep thoughts in such a simple manner is also something that we can all learn from. So thank you very much for that. We will have the felicitation ceremony in a bit, but I would, there are so many things that sort of resonate with the spirits that you sort of spoke about. The undergraduate research conference itself, where we have encouraged students to ask questions, and we feel that it's never too early to ask questions. One does not have to have be knowledgeable to ask questions. But another initiative that we would like to celebrate today is also, the creativity that we encourage in our students. And I would like to call upon stage Professor Maz bin Bilal. The students will do it? Okay, so the student editors, team members of the magazine Needle. And Needle this is the 4th version, if I'm right. 5th version, I'm sorry. So this is the 5th edition that has been published, that's being launched today. And it's in print, but it's also online. And it has different themes. And I think this year the theme is friendship. Sorry, desire. I'm sorry. Friendship was the last one. So this theme, this year the theme is desire. And we encourage students to, put in submissions in various forms. So please could I invite the students to come up on stage, and please could I invite Sohail Hashmi to inaugurate, to launch this edition. Please could I have Parijat? Parijat will speak a bit about needle and about this issue.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Parijat, and I'm here today on behalf of the Needle magazine. To give a short introduction about our magazine, we are a student-run collective that serves to be an open and artistic platform for the various forms of self-expression through various mediums for the student body at JGU. As our faculty advisor, Professor Maaz bin Bilal, likes to put it, needle is a symbol that stitches and brings together. It synthesizes, yet it potentially pricks and prods you too. My dear readers, it is my utmost pleasure to announce the launch of our latest issue, centered around the theme of desire. Desire manifests in human nature as a strong force of passion, yet it is something that breaks us down to our human vulnerabilities. Through this issue, our contributors fearlessly embrace the myriad forms that desire may take in all of its beauty and complexity. On that note, readers, I invite you all to immerse yourself in the pages of our latest issue, to ponder upon desire that echoes within us all, and to embrace the vulnerabilities that make us human. I would like to add that Needle is now accepting submissions for our next issue, themed around friendship, until the 28th of April. Finally, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to our faculty advisor, Professor Maaz, for his unconditional support, the team at URC, to the contributors for their wonderful submissions, and to the Needle team for their tireless work, as well as to our dear readers for your continued support. Thank you.